Um, when Marianne and Founders Bay initially reached out for me to do this, I immediately jumped on it because I think in a world of Udemy and YouTube videos like you and even AI, you can go and learn that way. But I think one of the best ways to learn is to share what you've built and then have it stressed and tested by folks like you. So I hope when we go through, this presentation today and we go through the Q&A, I'm by no means coming here as an expert or someone who's figured it out. I've spent the last decade of my career selling AI to multiple different personas, and I have used all the different tools you can think about. I would say I'm always the first rep on the team to use the newest tool to see if it's worth using. So, really excited for the conversation today and focusing really on my thesis in enterprise sales, which is how do you build this one foundation, this one knowledge layer that's connected to all the different data sources that we're going to go through today. And then from there, you can run every single sales play on top, prospecting, moving opportunities, executive alignment, you name it. And I only have 20 minutes. So I'm not going to be able to go through my entire playbook, but I will go through the skeleton and hopefully you walk away inspired to try some new things or take some of the stuff that I've gone through today and expand on it. So I'm also a part-time yoga teacher, by the way. And usually before I start a class, I always say if you snuck your phone in here, turn it off, hide it, try to give, your time and dedication and focus for the next little bit. So I'm asking you here, if you have Slack open, if you have email open, you might as well just go do those things. But if you got 20 minutes here to spare, stay with me because we're going to cover why the job has changed with AI, how I responded to that and what I've built and the different skills. I'll even show you the actual brainchild of all the tools that I'm leveraging and then the system that's sort of working now because of these tools. We'll end it off with talking about what really matters when you're building these systems. And, Marianne kind of alluded to what U.com does. We're solving a problem specifically in this space, but there's other ways to solve it as well. And then where to start. So that's my plan for the next 20 minutes here. Very important to start with the shift, right? I think about 10 years ago when I was a BDR, the amount of work that I had to put in just to personalize an email. And I'd be firing a very personalized email to a CEO, calling out their first name, maybe the school they went to, and maybe one important fact about the company. And I thought I was doing a great job. And it was super manual and tedious, right? It's really, really hard to personalize at scale, and really, really hard to stand out in someone's inbox unless you can be you can speak relevancy to, who they are, what their company is doing, and that's how you stand out. And so the new model does all that work for you. And, on top of that, being able to, aggregate all these different data sources and help you build things, any idea you have as a rep, any asset you want to create, any dashboard you may want to produce, any sort of strategy you may want to go through, you can now do that with AI once you create this foundational layer, which we're going to talk about. And, I think in the next 12 months, the reps who are going to make the most money or who are going to be the most hireable are the reps who know how to build this foundation. And so what does that foundation really look like? Before we jump into, what we want to focus on for the rep to build, I think it's important to sort of think about why are we building this foundation in the first place? Let's look at the buyer, right? I just went through a whole spiel about how it used to be very manual back in the day. Now it's more automated for the rep. The same thing is true for your buyer, right? The information advantage went to zero on both sides, meaning your buyer, before you get on your first discovery call with them or you get on a negotiation call with them, they are going to AI and asking everything about you, right? Who do you compete with? Where are you weak? And so you can learn just as much about them just as fast. And so knowing that both sides have this advantage now with data, we want to talk about how you can take advantage of this as a rep, right? So what I initially did was I actually sat down and I said, what am I doing from 9 to 5 every day? Prospecting, emailing, talking to managers, executives. Like, what am I really doing in a day? Which of these tasks are very repetitive? And so when you break down your day and then you start to turn those repetitive tasks into a skill, into different systems that we'll touch on in a moment, From there, you can then automate it. And some of the first skills I built really easily, which is actually a big part of the foundation, is the account research. Am I able to go and find out everything I can about Uber, for example? They're a public company. Can I read their 10Ks at scale? Can I go do research on the buying committee? Can I go find out what their competitors are doing? Can I go and do this deep, comprehensive account research on them really fast? Based off that, can I then write sequences that are personalized? Can I go find the right buyers based off the personas I know I need to target? Do I need to go to Salesforce anymore to log things? Can I automate that? And signals, right? What signals like hiring, funding, all of those things that matter? Can I, go and find that information? I will say breaking down your skills is sort of the easy part because you know what you do in a day. You know what tasks are repetitive. You can look at your calendar and even start to figure out what you do in a day. The hard part is, automating it is easy, but the hard part is data that makes it useful. We all know AI hallucinates, and we'll touch on that in a few slides why it does that. It makes mistakes, right? In order to go from using AI as like a fun little tool instead of Google, but to then use it at work, you need to connect it to data that makes it useful. So I've wired in our Salesforce data. I've wired in anything in Google Drive, Slack, LinkedIn. I'm using our own web search UPIs at you.com to do even more comprehensive research. And the best way to think about what that, little wiring means is I'm able to do a year's worth of research on Uber within 2 minutes. That's the level of work that comes in with that API. And then any sort of past account work. I just joined a company, for example. What's happened in the last 2 or 3 years that I've missed on this account, right? You don't have to go through all that data. You can get it all wired into this foundational system that I'm talking about. So you can always stay in context. Now, I know I'm talking a lot about this foundation. I think it'd be more important to show you a visual of that foundation that I'm talking about. The inputs I've already sort of spoken to that we have Salesforce, all of our calls are in Gong. There's note taking apps like Granola, Evernote. I use Whisperflow. I don't really type anymore. So these are personal tools that I'm leveraging that all have data in it. And that's going to be, so let's say, internal knowledge. Then you have the intelligence layer. Do you have PhD level agents, PhD level research at your fingertips to make sure that your internal context, which could be stale, is aligned with what's happening today, right? What's happening about the account in real time. And then a lot of what I'm doing after, which the next few slides will cover, which is like, okay, you build this foundation layer, this foundational layer. What plays are you running off of it? That's where the execution comes in building, sequences in Apollo. I'm starting to create skills in Claude. I'm actually creating account briefs per account that I target that goes and lives in Google Drive as like a source of truth. I'm building one-to-one pages. I actually built this deck using Mutiny. I can scale production of assets now using different tools. And then last but not least, all of this gets smarter and smarter and smarter as I use it more because it's a feedback loop. It sees what I like, what I don't like, what works, what doesn't work, where the conversions are coming from, where they're not coming from. So this is a good way to think about what is your foundational model. Here's mine. You might have access to half of these tools. You might have access to none of these tools. You might have access to double the amount of these tools. Breaking it down and understanding what your foundational model looks like will then allow you to start thinking about what plays can I run off of it. And the reason why you want to run these plays off of it, just before some of you might be thinking this is a lot of work or this is a lot of thinking, what this has unlocked for me is that I can now, as an enterprise rep, I can go after 4x the amount of accounts that I used to with equal, I would say, much better personalization than the first name, calling out the school, and a small fact. I'm getting very detailed with my personalization. And I think it's actually becoming table stakes. Like if you're not doing this, then you're really falling behind. Your outbound, pipeline generation must be really struggling. And the whole point of this is not to show off slides to folks and say, hey, look what I've built. It's because now, if this is all automated for me and I'm saving all this time, I can jump on more calls. I can spend more time reviewing my calls. I can spend more time. For me, it matters to be on LinkedIn to engage with these enterprise accounts, which are going to be longer sales cycles. I can be more available for events and conferences. I can actually sit down with execs and managers and come up with strategic plays. And what I like to refer to as a rep, you want to be thinking more, especially if you're mid-market and enterprise. You want to be thinking about how do I move like a chess player versus checkers. And sometimes when you don't have enough time, you live in that checkers space. But by automating a lot of the work that you do without losing the quality, improving it, you can start to spend more time playing chess with your accounts. Which, by the way, in a world of a lot of noise, in a world where people are blocking emails, unsubscribing, and everyone has tools like Sales Loft and Outreach, you need to think like you need to be deploying chess-like plays because everyone can send a very personalized email now. So this is really table stakes more than anything. Now, at the very core of what I do, I'm going to say it's the account intelligence. What I'm doing here is I'm using all those different tools that you saw to go and do crazy amount of research on this account, read their finance reports. If they're private, then go do some extra digging, but just a lot of research that's then put into this document that if anyone ever sent me to read, I'd be upset because there's no chance of reading it. It's way too dense for a human, but it's really, really good for an agent. And so once you have this really comprehensive document, you can run these plays off of this document because you have this information set, right? In a way that the agent's going to prefer to consume data. For example, what I do is if I'm going after, I'm just going to use Uber because we're talking about Uber a few times now, but if I'm targeting Uber and I know the buyer personas that I go after, let's say go to market leaders or CTOs, whatever it might be, I will then tell, my agent harness and work within my agent harness to say, let's leverage the account plan to then build four different sequences for four different personas, and then I'll actually leverage best practices on the internet on the number of steps, the number of calls, the LinkedIn messaging format, the format of my emails itself. So you're leveraging the web's best practices on how to write this, and then you're also leveraging the tools to build this. And I'm not kidding when I say this. When I sit down at my computer and I'm going after an account, my hands are off the keyboard and it's building the sequence in real time through the MCP, through the APIs, through Playwright, through my terminal, right? So you can really start to become hands off and just watch it and really become a human in the loop to say, good email, bad email, edit this, edit that. The other aspect of this that I personally have really enjoyed is, okay, now that I got this machine humming, what's like my version of Jarvis for dashboards that I would like? For me, it matters a lot that I could have a page, a dashboard that I've built with all these tools that I'm sort of laying out for you here. A way to look at every single opportunity that I have in Salesforce, what's happening, who's involved, and it's a beautiful dashboard that if I ever took some time off, I can just give to my manager and she would know exactly where I'm at with every single deal and what to do. No more handing over a Google Doc. It's a live dashboard with the pulse and it's constantly refreshing. Not every day, that'd be a lot of tokens, but every week on the what's happening with my accounts, any new Slack conversations, any new emails sent out here, to make sure everything's sort of organized. Then I have one for accounts to target. I think some of us here may have used tools like Sixth Sense and Demand Base that will tell you if someone's on your site or if they're searching keywords for what you do. Um, those are good signals, and you can probably incorporate that somewhere in here. But you can also leverage other signals across the web, funding, hiring, all those different elements, create a dashboard to say, I own 1,000 accounts. Who should I go after today and why? And if you already have built-in sort of fields in Salesforce, for example, that tells you usage, if that's a part of your business model, or signups, you can get all of that organized here. So you create this Jarvis-like dashboard to then guide you day to day. And you can really have fun with this one, by the way. Now, very important closing message here is you may go and start building things today, tomorrow, whatever it may be. But there's one thing I've learned in the last decade when it comes to AI is, especially with LLMs today, it's all frozen in time. right? Any LLM that, was launched in the last 4 or 5 months, it didn't have the data on FIFA, for example. It had no idea that Spain, won. And the way that it does that is it actually makes a search call. It has to go onto the internet, just like you and I need to go into the internet to find information. So you have to keep that in mind when you're building anything, that if you're just using a model, if you're just relying on Claude, if you're just relying on OpenAI or whatever it may be, it's frozen in time. So it's going to hallucinate and it's going to sound really, really right when it hallucinates. So what you want to focus on is how do I take this really, really smart machine that's really, really good at predicting the next word? That's essentially what an LLM is. How do I then feed it and ground it with two layers of data? Your internal data, Salesforce, Drive, Slack, you name it. You will probably need to talk to IT for this, and not every IT person will agree or approve this. So, that is red tape you got to manage. But then you also want to connect the external, right? You can connect it to Slack and Salesforce all day, but that data also goes stale, right? Because they might have just got funding today. So you want to connect it to the internet, to the World Wide Web, and from there, you are now relying, on fresh internal and external data and not just the model's memory. And that's when it starts to create really, really good output, whether it's sequencing, research, whatever it may be. That's when you'll start to be really impressed by what your system is going to be building and bringing forward for you to leverage. And this is not something where now that it's on, I just step away from my desk and I'm playing tennis for 7 hours during the day because I figured it out. Um, it's just freed up more time to focus on other chess-like plays, right? Knowing which account to actually go after, knowing which angle that's even being proposed by AI is the best angle, right? You are still the expert. And you get to almost become a little bit more an executive because all this grunt admin work is handled for you. You still need to be good on calls. You need to be able to work on your speech, the relationship. You need to be good in person. And honestly, more than anything, with all this automation that's happening, especially with some of the stuff I've covered today, the in real life events and conferences and handshakes and dinners become even more valuable with all this stuff sort of automated. So not losing track of that is key. So to close out, if I were you, whether you have some of this built out or not, start with the skill, right? Break down your day. What do you do that's, if you're doing it only once a month, probably don't need to automate that, right? Don't need to become so efficient that you're optimizing for every single thing in your day. Two, grounded in data. You will not like anything AI produces for you, or it just won't be business ready, or it's not going to be fruitful unless you ground it in. So start to say, okay, what APIs are out there? And there's a lot of free ones, including U.com. There's a free tier to connect the internet's data to it. So it's not hallucinating, and it's not making stuff up, and it doesn't make you look bad. And then from there, if a lot of you on this call are doing pipeline generation, outbound prospecting, whatever it may be, start to build your sequences and don't just put everyone into one sequence and then hope that they convert. You have AI now, and you saw what I did, what I went through today. Start to create unique sequences per account, and that's how you can start to do account-based selling. And then build your dashboards so you always have a source of truth. You always have a way to capture everything you're doing. Um, and just keep in mind, those the dashboards, these are unique to you as well.